Good afternoon, everyone. Dear students, today we will continue with our story Rangas Marriage, written by Masti Venkatesha Iyengar. Earlier, we mentioned that the story dates back to the early days of British rule when life in villages was slow and child marriage was common. The story very interestingly shows the manipulations done by the narrator to bring a change in the views of Ranga about marriage. So eventually he gets him married to Ratna. We also mentioned that there are four main characters. Ranga, who is the son of accountant, Shyama, who is the narrator, Ratna, who will get married to Ranga, and Shastri, the village astrologer who plays an important role in bringing Ranga and Ratna together. At the beginning of the story, the narrator tells us that this story is called Ranga's Marriage because it is about Ranga, a common boy. He also mentions that he hasn't given any elaborate title to the present story because this story is about Ranga's marriage. The narrator calls Indian geographers a flock of sheep while talking about his village. He says that British writers did not know about this small village, so there is no mention of it in geography books. And Indian geographers blindly followed the British ones and didn't mention it either. That is why he says they behaved like a flock of sheep, who blindly followed the first one. So the narrator mentions that this village is very small. However, he speaks highly about Hosahali. He is filled with praise for his village, even though it hasn't been mentioned on the map. Later on, the author describes his village. First, he tells us about the village doctor, Dr. Gundabhata. He says that Dr. Gundabhata agrees with him. He has been to many places, but he says that Hosahali is a very special place. The narrator also describes the village. He says, the village is famous for its sour mangoes and creepers growing in the village pond. The leaves of the creeper from the pond could serve as good plates for serving afternoon meals. However, the narrator, Shyama, says that a real appreciation of the village can be felt only if one visits it personally and gets acquainted with it. To him, a personal visit to the place can bring out its beauty. And then he starts narrating the story, something that happened 10 years ago. At that time, there were not many people who knew English. And the village accountant was the first one who had enough courage to send his son to Bangalore to study. Now it is different. There are many who know English. He also mentions one particular story when Rama Rao's son came out to pay for some wood. So he spoke to the woman who brought the wood. He told her he didn't have any change and asked her to come the next morning. However, the woman didn't understand the English word change and she went away muttering to herself. Here, the narrator indicates how less was English known in the village. The old lady didn't know the meaning of change, and neither did the author. He went to Ranga's house and asked him, what does it mean? The narrator recalls this story which happened 10 years ago. The narrator considers English to be a priceless commodity, but at the same time, he also asserts that learning a foreign language need not affect our tradition and culture. We will see once Ranga is back, he will be the same Ranga as he was when he left. Ranga's homecoming was a great event, particularly because at that time there were not many people who spoke English. So people gathered to see Ranga. They came to his house and they wanted to check has he changed after learning English from Bangalore. So people rushed to see him, and attracted by the crowd, the narrator too went there. He stood there and he was wondering why have all these people come. Then he understood. All of them came to see Ranga. So on seeing so many people there, Ranga came out smiling. And everyone was surprised to see that Ranga was the same as he had been 6 months ago when he had first left the village. An old lady who was near him, she looked into his eyes, noticing that he still has the sacred thread, and she said, "He hasn't lost his caste. He is still holding on to his customs." They were very pleased to see that Ranga hasn't changed. Once they realized that he hasn't changed, they melted away. The crowd dispersed. So that very afternoon, during Ranga's visit to Shyama's house, he asked Ranga about his plans for marriage. Ranga replied that first he must find the right girl whom he admired and who would be mature, otherwise he would stay a bachelor. So in the beginning of the story, Ranga thinks that he should marry a girl who would be mature enough to understand him. Shyama was unhappy that Ranga, who could prove to be a good husband, had decided to remain a bachelor at present. He is impressed by his qualities and he decides to get him married to Ratna, a girl who has come to stay with her uncle Ramarao. Ramarao's niece, a pretty girl of 11, had come to stay with him. She was from a big town, so she knew how to play the veena and the harmonium. Here we meet Ratna. She was 11 years old at that time and she came from a big town. She knew how to play veena and the harmonium. Veena and harmonium are musical instruments. She also had a sweet voice. Both her parents had died and her uncle had brought her home. Ranga was just the boy for her, and she the most suitable bride for him. Here we find out that Ratna, after her parents died, after they passed away, she came to stay with her uncle, Ramarao. And at that time, Ranga was just a boy for her, and narrator says, and she was the most suitable bride for him. Suitable means apt or fit for. It means right or appropriate for a particular person, purpose, or situation. Since I was a frequent visitor to Ramarao's place, the girl was quite free with me. I completely forgot to mention her name. Ratna it was. The very next morning, I went to their house and told Ramarao's wife, "I'll send some buttermilk for you. Ask Ratna to fetch it." So the narrator tells us that he was a frequent visitor to Ramarao's place. Frequent means occurring or done many times or at short intervals. He would come to visit Ramrao very often, and the girl was quite free with me. The girl refers to Ratna. She was quite free. It means she spoke freely in front of him. So the next morning, he went to their house and told Ramrao's wife that he has some buttermilk for them. And he said, ask Ratna to fetch it. To fetch means to bring. It means to go for and then bring back something for someone. Ratna came. It was a Friday, so she was wearing a grand sari. I told her to sit in my room and requested her to sing a song. I sent for Ranga. Here, the narrator has already made a plan, and this is the first time Ranga and Ratna will meet. So what he did was, he told Ramrao's wife that he is sending some buttermilk, and he asked Ratna to come and take it to their house. But at the same time, he had sent for Ranga as well, so that they could meet. He says it was Friday and she was wearing a grand sari. Grand means splendid, magnificent. She was dressed very well. He told her to sit in the room and he asked her to sing a song. And in the same time, he sent for Ranga to come. While she was singing the song, Krishnamurti in front of my eyes, Ranga reached the door. He stopped at the threshold. Threshold refers to the entrance, the bottom of the doorway. He stopped and he didn't want to interrupt. He didn't want the singing to stop, but he was curious to see the singer. He was curious to see who is singing this song, who is singing so beautifully. Carefully, he peeped in. He peeped in means he took a glimpse or glance inside. Quickly, shyly, he peeped in. The light coming into the room was blocked. It was not so light, not so bright. Ratna looked up and seeing a stranger there, she abruptly stopped. Abruptly means suddenly and unexpectedly. It means the moment she saw a stranger there, she stopped suddenly. Suppose you buy the best quality mango. You eat it slowly, savoring its peel, before biting into the juicy flesh. You do not want to waste any part of it. Before you take another bite, the fruit slips out of your hand and falls to the ground. How do you feel? Ranga's face showed the same disappointment when the singing stopped. Here the narrator explains, in his own words, how disappointed Ranga was when the singing stopped, because it was he who peeped in, and upon seeing him, Ratna stopped. She stopped singing. And the narrator tells us, suppose you buy the best quality mango. You eat it slowly, savoring its peel. Savoring means enjoying fully, enjoying to the full. You can be savoring good food or drink. So before biting into the juicy flesh, you eat it slowly, and you don't want to waste any part of it. You don't want to eat it carelessly and waste some of it, because it is the best quality mango and you want to eat every part of it. But before you take another bite, the fruit slips out of your hand and falls to the ground. And then how do you feel? Well, Ranga showed the same disappointment when the singing stopped. To slip out is a phrasal verb. Here it means to slide out. It means it slipped out of the hand. The fruit slips out of your hand. It slides out. So Ranga showed the same huge disappointment when the singing stopped. He asked, "You sent for me?" he asked as he came in and sat on a chair. Ratna stood at a distance, her head lowered. Ranga repeatedly glanced at her. Once our eyes met, and he looked very embarrassed. No one spoke for a long while. Here, finally, Ranga comes inside and he sits down while Ratna is a bit further. She is standing at a distance, a bit far away, with her head lowered. She has her head down. Ranga repeatedly glanced at her. To glance means to take a brief or hurried look, to glimpse. He was looking at her. And then the narrator says, "Once our eyes met." Whose eyes? The narrator's and Ranga's eyes met, and he, Ranga, looked very embarrassed. No one spoke for a long while. No one spoke for a long time. Ranga was feeling embarrassed. "It was my coming in that stopped the singing. Let me leave." Ranga says, "It is because of me that the singing had stopped. It was my coming in that stopped the singing. Let me leave." So he says he is leaving. However, he doesn't leave. The narrator says, "Words, mere words. The fellow said he would leave, but did not make a move. How can one expect words to match actions in these days of Kali Yuga?" Here the narrator is cracking a joke. He says, "These are words, mere words." It means it is said only as a formality. He doesn't actually mean it. Mere words. The fellow said he would leave. He said, the fellow, Ranga, said he would leave, but he did not make a move. His words are not matching his actions. Ratna ran inside, overcome by shyness. Instead of Ranga, Ratna was the one who left. She was very shy. After a while, Ranga asked, "Who is that girl, Swami? Who is that girl, Master?" Now the narrator will tell him something about the girl. So as we can see, after hearing Ranga's views, the narrator proceeded systematically. He remembers that Ranga said he wouldn't marry a girl he doesn't admire. And the narrator, Shyama, knew a girl whom he would admire for sure. So he created an opportunity where Ranga might listen to Ratna singing and have a glimpse of her. Shyama knew Ratna. She was his neighbor Ram Rao's niece, and she stayed with him at that time. She was from the city. She was beautiful, she had a sweet voice, and she could play veena and harmonium well. So this was the plan that the narrator made. He made a plan to let Ranga meet the girl and see her himself by inviting Ranga to his home when Ratna was called there as well, on purpose. He arranged that two of them meet. So when Ratna came to Shyam's house, he requested her to sing, so that when Ranga arrived, he could hear her. And Ranga was very impressed with her singing, and he was impressed by her beauty as well. So he inquired about her. He said, "Who is that girl, Swami?" And what kind of answer does he get? The narrator tells him, "Who's that inside?" The lion wanted to know. The he-goat, who had taken shelter in the temple, replied, "Does it matter who I am? I'm a poor animal who has already eaten 9 lions. I have vowed to eat one more. Tell me, are you male or female? The lion fled the place in fear, it seems. This is the answer Ranga gets. The author tells him that, like the he-goat, the narrator, I refers to the narrator. He said, "What does it matter to either of us who she is? I'm already married and you aren't the marrying kind. You said you are not going to marry. You aren't the marrying kind. And it doesn't matter to either of us who is she." So here we can see that, first of all, the narrator says words, mere words. He said, when Ranga admitted that he should not have come to interrupt Ratna's singing, he said that he will go because he had interrupted her. However, the narrator says his words don't match the actions. He said, "Let me leave," but he was not leaving. And then, after Ratna went away, after Ranga asked about her, the narrator compares himself to a he-goat and he compares Ranga to a lion. He refers to a story in which a clever he-goat was able to scare the lion away. Here he compares himself to a goat who has laid a plot for Ranga's marriage, and just as the lion was unable to escape the clever moves of the goat, Ranga was also taken in by his plan. This is a story that he tells him. The he-goat who had taken shelter in the temple replied, "Does it matter who I am?" This is a he-goat who is talking to a lion. The he-goat says, "I am a poor animal who has already eaten 9 lions." So this he-goat tricks the lion. The goat says, "I have vowed." I have vowed means I have taken an oath. I have pledged that I will eat one more lion. Tell me, are you male or female? And the lion was afraid. He fled the place in fear. To fled means to run away from a place or situation of danger. That is why he compares himself with the he-goat. The narrator compares himself with the he-goat, saying that in the same way he has laid a sort of trap for Ranga, just as the he-goat did. Very hopefully he asked, "She isn't married then?" His voice did not betray his excitement, but I knew it was there. Here, Ranga is asking, is she married? He was very excited. His voice did not betray his excitement. To betray means to reveal or to show. It means that it didn't show in his voice that he was excited. But the narrator knew he was very excited. So the narrator tells him that she was married a year ago. His face, Ranga's face, shriveled like a roasted brinjal. To shrivel means to become wrinkled, withered. And we know how does a roasted brinjal look like. It is very shriveled, very wrinkled. So his face showed not so much happiness on hearing this news. His face shriveled like a roasted brinjal. He was disappointed. After a while, Ranga left, saying, "I must go. I have work at home." I went to our Shastri the next morning and told him, "Keep everything ready to read the stars. I'll come later." Shyama goes to Shastri. Shastri is the village astrologer, and he tells him to keep everything ready to read the stars. Read the stars means to make the predictions. And he said, I will come later. He also mentioned that he tutored him in all what he wanted him to say. Here we will see that the astrologer will play a role, and he will be tutored by Shyama. I found no change in Ranga when I met him that afternoon. What's the matter? You seem to be lost in thought, I said. Nothing's wrong, believe me. Headache? Come, let's go and see a doctor. So that afternoon, when the narrator met Ranga, he was looking a bit absent. So the narrator asks him, What's the matter? What's wrong? Or, what's the matter? You seem to be lost in thought. Lost in thought refers to thinking over something. And then he said, Headache. Maybe you have a headache. Come, let's see a doctor. But Ranga says, I have no headache. I am my usual self. I'm my usual self means I'm normal. So here we can find out that Shyama lied to Ranga by telling him that Ratna was already married, which disappointed Ranga. This confirmed the narrator's deduction. So next day, Shyama tutored the village astrologer, Shastri, to speak as Shyama wanted him to speak when Ranga would be brought to him. So he made the astrologer convince Ranga that Ratna was a good match for him. The narrator continues saying that I went through the same thing when the process of choosing a girl for me was going on, but I don't think that could be a reason for your present condition. Here, Shyama knows much more than Ranga, and he tells him, I was behaving the same way. I went through the same thing when the process of choosing a girl for me was going on, but in your case, I don't think that's the case. And Ranga stared at him. He looked at him intently. Here, process of choosing a girl refers to a way of arranged marriage, the way the girl would be chosen for him. Come, let's go and see Shastri, I suggested. We will find out whether Guru and Shani are favorable for you or not. Guru and Shani are planets that are used in astrology to predict the future. So Shyama suggests Ranga to go and visit Shastri and to see whether the conditions are favorable for him. Ranga accompanied him without any protest. He accompanied him means he went along with him without any protest, means agreeing. As soon as Shastri saw me, he exclaimed, What a surprise, Shyama! Haven't seen you for a long time. Here we find out the name of the narrator. Here the narrator says, Shyama is none other than your servant, the narrator of this tale. Here the narrator introduces himself. None other means nobody else than your servant, your humble servant, the narrator of this tale. I got angry and shouted, What? Only this morning? But Shastri completed my sentence. You finished all your work and are now free to visit me. Here we can see that when Shastri said, What a surprise, I haven't seen you for a long time. At the same moment, the narrator said, But only this morning. He wanted to say, We met only this morning. Why are you saying we haven't met for a long time? But then he understood that he is about to make a mistake. So he stopped and Shastri completed his sentence. Shastri said, yes, this morning you finished all your work and you are now free to visit me. Had he not done so, I would have ruined our plan by bursting like grains that are kept in the sun to dry. I was extremely careful of what I said afterwards. The narrator said, had he not done so, had he not finished my sentence, I would have ruined our plan. Our plan would have been ruined. And he says, by bursting like grains that are kept in the sun to dry. To burst means to break open or to break apart, suddenly and violently, such as in this case. Grains that are kept in the sun to dry, they burst, they open. So their secret would have also burst out hadn't Shastri finished his sentence. And he says, I was extremely careful of what I said afterwards. I was extremely careful of what I said later on. Shastri turned to Ranga. When did the young son of your accountant clerk come home? What can I do for him? It's very rarely that he visits us. It's very rarely that he visits us. It means that he is not coming very often. And the narrator, Shyama, tells him, take out your paraphernalia. Paraphernalia refers to equipment or things. It refers to tools of your trade. Paraphernalia most commonly refers to a group of equipment, apparatus, or furnishing used for a particular activity. This is an equipment needed for a particular activity. So he tells him, take out your paraphernalia. Our Rangappa seems to have something on his mind. Can you tell us what's worrying him? Shall we put your science of astrology to the test? Means, shall we test your science of astrology? There was authority in my voice as I spoke to Shastri. So it means he was speaking with authority, with a firm voice to Shastri. He took out 2 sheets of paper, some cowries, and a book of palmyra leaves, saying, ours is an ancient science, Aya. There is a story to it, but I won't tell you that story now. This is not a harikatha, which allows you to tell a story within a story. You may get bored. I'll tell it to you some other time. So here he takes out his paraphernalia. He takes out 2 sheets of paper, some cowries. These are highly polished seashells, brightly patterned. They are dome-shaped and they have a long, narrow opening. They are called cowrie shells. Cowrie. He took out some cowries and a book of palmyra leaves. Palmyra refers to a palm, an Asian fan palm, which yields a wide range of useful products, including timber, fiber, fruits, and so on. And he continues saying that ours is an ancient science, Aya. Aya means elder one. He says there is a story to it, but I won't tell you that story now. It would take a long time. This is not a harikatha. Harikatha is a religious story. It is a form of a Hindu traditional discourse in which the storyteller explores a traditional theme, usually the life of a saint or a story from an Indian epic. Harikatha is a composite art form composed of storytelling, poetry, music, drama, dance, and philosophy, most prevalent in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. So he says this is not a harikatha which allows you to tell a story within a story. We will not go into that now. You may get bored. I'll tell you some other time. Shastri moved his lips fast as he counted on his fingers and then asked, what's your star? Ranga didn't know. Never mind, Shastri indicated with a shake of his head. First of all, Shastri asked Ranga what is his star, but Ranga didn't know. And Shastri indicated, he showed with a shake of his hand, that it's okay, it doesn't matter. Never mind, he said. He did some more calculations before saying in a serious tone, "It is about a girl." Now the narrator says, "I had been controlling my laughter all this while, but now I burst out laughing." I turned to Ranga. Exactly what I had said. Here we can see the narrator is pretending that he has no idea that it is about a girl. He has no idea what is Shastri going to say. But we know that it is their plan. They have made a plan to mention Ratna. So the astrologer says in a serious voice, "It is about a girl." The narrator burst out laughing. To burst into laughter or to suddenly start laughing. To burst out laughing. It means to suddenly start laughing. Now the narrator burst out laughing and he told Ranga, "See, exactly what I had said." "Who is the girl?" "It was your humble servant who asked the question." Who asked this question? The narrator. The humble servant is asking the question. Who is the girl? Although he knows it is Ratna because they have already made a plan. Shastri thought for a while before replying. "She probably has the name of something found in the ocean." "Kamala?" "Maybe." Here they are speculating. After Shastri says that she probably has the name of something found in the ocean, they are trying to guess the name. So the narrator says, "Kamala." And the astrologer says, "Maybe." Could it be Pachi, moss? Must it be moss if it's not Kamala? Why not pearl or Ratna, the precious stone? Ratna? The girl in Ramarao's house is Ratna. Tell me, is there any chance of your negotiations bearing fruit? To bear fruit means to yield results. Here, both Shastri and the astrologer are pretending that this is all a coincidence. However, they both know that they will mention Ratna, the name Ratna. Is there any chance of our negotiations bearing fruit? Is there any chance that this will yield with success? The narrator asks. And Shastri says, "Definitely," after thinking for some time. There was no surprise on Ranga's face. There was surprise on Ranga's face and some happiness. I noticed it. Ranga was happy to hear that there is a mention of Ratna. "But that girl is married," I said. Then I turned to him. His face had fallen. On hearing again that she is married, his face had fallen. Ranga's face had fallen. He was again looking disappointed. "I don't know all that. There may be some other girl who is suitable. I only told you what our Shastra indicated." The astrologer says, "I am not sure, they might be some other girl who is suitable. I only told you what our Shastra indicated." Shastra means a work of sacred scripture. Indicated means directed, whatever was directed by our Shastra. We left the place. On the way, we passed by Ramarao's house. Ratna was standing at the door. I went in alone and came out a minute later. So they're going back from the astrologer and they pass Ramarao's house. Ratna was there, standing at the door, and the narrator went inside alone and he came outside. And he says, surprising, this girl isn't married, it seems. Now he tells Ranga that she is not married. He pretends that he went inside to ask is she married, but he already knew she wasn't married. So he says the girl isn't married. Someone told me the other day that she was. What Shastri told us had turned out to be true after all. But Rangappa, I can't believe that you have been thinking of her. Swear on the name of Madhavacharya and tell me, is it true what Shastri said? Madhavacharya was a renowned Indian philosopher. And here the narrator asks Ranga to swear on the name of Madhavacharya that is it true what Shastri said? He says, I had no idea that you have been thinking of her, although he knew very well. I do not know whether anyone else would have been direct, Ranga admitted. There is greater truth in that Shastra than we imagine. What he said is absolutely true. So, Shyama, upon asking about Ratna and about the predictions, finds out that it was all true. Ranga says that there is a great truth in that Shastra, and what he said is absolutely true. Ranga has been direct, very direct. Shastri was at the well when I went there that evening. So that evening, he met Shastri at the well. They were perhaps fetching water. So he said, so Shastri girl, you repeated everything I had taught you about without giving rise to any suspicion. What a marvelous Shastra yours is. He didn't like it at all. Here we can see that the way narrator speaks to the astrologer, Shastri didn't like it at all. Shastrige refers to Guru. So in a way, the narrator is making fun. He said, you repeated everything I had taught you without giving rise to any suspicion. Without giving rise to any suspicion means without being suspicious, without any doubt. But the astrologer didn't like it. He doesn't want to be treated shabbily and he tries to assert his knowledge of the Shastra when Shyama tries to make fun of him. And he says, what are you saying? What you said to me was what I could have found out myself from the Shastras. Don't forget, I developed on the hints that you had given me. The astrologer tells him that he developed on the hints he got. He developed means he expanded on the clues, on the hints or on the clues he had given him. He doesn't want to admit that it was a setup. And the narrator says, tell me, is that what a decent man says? Decent means reasonable or adequate, satisfactory. So he says, this is not what a decent man would say. Why is he saying such things? Because they both knew it was a plan they made. Rangappa had come the other day to invite me for dinner. What's the occasion? I asked. It's Shyama's birthday. He is 3. Here we can see that Rangappa, our Ranga, has a son. And he comes to invite Shyama, our narrator, for dinner. He says it is Shyama's birthday. Here we find out that Ranga has named his son after Shyama. Ranga's son is also called Shyama. Shyama says it's not a nice name, Shyama. I'm like a dark piece of oil cake. Why did you have to give that golden child of yours such a name? What a childish couple you are, Ratna and you. Now here we find out that Ratna and Ranga are married and they have a son. They have named their son Shyama after the author. I know. It is the English custom of naming the child after someone you like. Your wife is 8 months pregnant now. Who is there to help your mother to cook? My sister has come with her. Here we find out that Ratna and Ranga are married. They have one son who is 3 years old and they are expecting another child. Ratna is 8 months pregnant and there is his sister who came with her to help with cooking. I went there for dinner. Shyama rushed to me when I walked in and put his arms around my legs. This Shyama is a baby. Baby Shyama rushed to the narrator's Shyama and he put his arms around his legs. He kissed him on his cheek and placed a ring on his tiny little finger. Allow me to take leave of you, reader. I'm always here, ready to serve you. You were not bored, I hope. The story is concluded with the narrator talking to us, to reader. The narrator is asking us for leave. He says, now I have to go, but I'm always here, ready to serve you. And I hope you were not bored with the story. Now we have found out that Ranga and Ratna had gotten married. They have 2 children, and it's all because of the narrator. That is why they named their son after Shyama, because Shyama played a very important role in getting Ratna and Ranga married. From the story, it's obvious that he made some serious efforts to unite the couple. It was their way of showing respect towards him when they decided to name their son after Shyama. Dear students, this is all for today. I hope you like the story. Have a nice day and see you soon.